You know those cheesy romantic comedies where the guy meets the girl, sparks fly, parents are all smiles, and then cue the wedding bells? Yeah, well, my story is basically the opposite of that, except with a dash of toxic love, a sprinkle of betrayal, and a main course of sweet, calculated revenge. See, I wasn't just marrying my fiancée, I was apparently applying for some sort of membership into her family's secret society of the socially superior. And trust me, if you've ever been around rich suburban parents who think they're one latte away from being royalty, you know they take membership very seriously. The first time I met them, her mom gave me a smile so tight, I swear her Botox almost cracked, and her dad shook my hand like he was checking if I'd stolen his watch. They didn't say it outright, but the message was clear. You're not one of us. Still, I thought love would win. Spoiler, love did not win. Money and status won. Apparently, my lack of a family yacht and a trust fund meant I wasn't her level. Their words, not mine. Now here's where it gets interesting, or depressing, depending on your taste for drama. They didn't just suggest she rethink marrying me. No, they staged what I can only describe as an intervention/cult meeting in their mansion's living room. Picture this. Her father pacing in front of a fireplace big enough to roast an entire cow. Her mother perched on a white leather sofa like a queen on her throne. And my fiancé sitting there, staring at the floor like a hostage. I half expected them to pull out a PowerPoint presentation titled, "Reasons Why This Wedding is a Catastrophic Mistake." And honestly, I think they might have if I'd stayed longer. Her father started talking about legacy and family image, like we were in some kind of medieval kingdom, and I was a peasant trying to marry the princess. Her mom, meanwhile, kept throwing in little passive-aggressive jabs about my ambitious but modest career. Translation, I wasn't making enough to fund her next facelift. And then came the betrayal. She, my fiancée, the woman who once told me she'd marry me in a courthouse wearing pajamas if it came to that, finally looked up, met my eyes, and said, "Maybe they're right." That was the moment the betrayal burned hotter than a gas station coffee. I knew her parents were toxic, but hearing her parrot their words, that was the kind of toxic love you only see in cautionary tales and reality TV. The next day, she texted me, yes, texted, to say the wedding was off. No dramatic, tear-filled goodbye. No heartfelt conversation. Just a couple of sentences and a "hope you understand." Hope I understand? Oh, I understood perfectly. I understood that I had been underestimated. I understood that they thought they could just erase me from their perfect little country club fantasy like I was a bad Yelp review. But here's the thing about me. I'm not the kind of guy who just slinks away into obscurity. I am the kind of guy who starts plotting revenge while finishing his coffee. And maybe, just maybe, I'm the kind of guy who thinks, if they want a war, let's give them one. But let's make it classy. Because this wasn't just about a canceled wedding anymore. This was about every time I'd been told I wasn't good enough. Every snide glance across a dinner table. Every time someone assumed my worth was measured in how much I had in the bank. It was about turning the narrative upside down and watching their jaws hit the floor. And yes, maybe I imagined doing it in slow motion, with dramatic music playing in the background. Hey, a man's allowed to dream. But to pull it off, I couldn't go charging in with insults or desperate pleas. That's what they'd expect. No, I'd need patience, precision, and a little bit of theater. You don't just walk into a revenge plot without a plan. You orchestrate it like a symphony. And in that moment, standing outside their mansion, with the taste of betrayal still fresh, I knew one thing. The show was just getting started, and I was about to become the star they never saw coming. I didn't rage text, didn't call, didn't show up with flowers and a speech about fate. I went quiet, like a storm that shuts off the birds. That's how you do it in America when you want actual leverage. You disappear, you let the other side believe the narrative is over, and then you start storyboarding the sequel. Revenge, but with lighting, blocking, and a budget. I packed the ring back in its little velvet coffin, returned the tux, and began frequenting places her parents assumed I'd never step foot in without a valet ticket borrowed from someone richer. Networking breakfasts where the coffee tastes like lectures. Charity mixers where people pronounce impact as if it were a luxury brand. And those creepy leadership summits, hosted in hotel ballrooms beneath chandeliers that look like frozen fireworks. I wasn't there to be impressed. I was there to draw a map of the ecosystem that had declared me unfit. Who funded whom? Who owed whom? Who smiled while twisting the knife? It wasn't love anymore. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was field research on power, betrayal, and the soft underbelly of their perfect little world. The thing about her family's class, call it gentry-lite, call it premium HOA aristocracy, is that their empire isn't built on castles, it's built on committees, boards, councils, advisory panels. No one reads, but everyone fears. They don't take castles, they take chairmanships. And in those meeting minutes lies a gold mine of leverage disguised as boredom. So I learned the calendar. The foundation gala in October, the hospital board breakfast in January, the golf course redevelopment vote in March, the annual donor retreat in June at a humble vineyard with a helipad. I wasn't invited to any of it. Yet. But America loves a self-starter, and LinkedIn is basically a carnival of people volunteering to explain how they're important. With a few polite messages, a couple of "loved your insights on sustainable giving" comments, and 2 coffees that tasted like punishment, I had a mentor who had a board seat, who had a nephew who owed him a favor. And just like that, I had a laminated badge that let me into the kitchen door of their universe. Meanwhile, I built a new version of myself the way startups build hype. Teaser, soft launch, controlled leak. I updated my bio with exactly the kind of vague power words her father respected. Strategy, partnerships, growth, none of which are illegal, and all of which mean I can get things done without telling you how. I revived an old side hustle helping family-owned shops automate everything they hated doing, then quietly tied it to a community fund that happened to be courting the very hospital where her mother chaired a committee with a name that sounded like an expensive candle. 2 bakery chains, 1 HVAC company, a scrappy landscaping outfit with more grit than marketing. Within 8 weeks, they were humming. And my inbox had polite notes from gatekeepers asking if I'd consider advising a philanthropy incubator. It was all very civic, very wholesome, very American dream with a spreadsheet. But under it, a drumbeat. Revenge, revenge, revenge. If you think I'm the villain, fine. In a different cut, maybe I am. But in this cut, remember, they told my fiancée I wasn't her level, and coached her into calling off the wedding like a PR crisis. Toxic love dressed in pearls and khaki. It wasn't just betrayal. It was curated betrayal, etched into the family brand. So I curated back. I learned her father's obsession, a development on the East Side, the kind of live work play utopia that promises artisan popsicles and ends up evicting nostalgia. He'd over-leveraged his reputation to push it through. The swing vote lived with the hospital board. The hospital board listened to the donor council. The donor council just launched a small business initiative that, what do you know, listed me as an early partner. I didn't need to buy influence. I needed to become the glue between the parts no one ever sees. America runs on glue. Rumors help. And I didn't have to plant any. I just let them drift like pollen. A photo here, a panel appearance there, a quiet conversation at a Saturday fundraiser where I said nothing definitive and everything suggestive. We're exploring options that prioritize community outcomes, I'd murmur, letting the words hover like a chandelier. Do you know what those sentences do in rooms filled with people terrified of being on the wrong side of the next headline? They breed caution. Caution stalls projects. Stalled projects scare lenders. Scared lenders put people like her father on the phone at midnight rehearsing optimism to credit committees that don't believe in fairy tales. I did, at one point, drive down our old street and park outside the cafe where we used to plan apartment decor we never bought. That's the thing they don't tell you about revenge. It borrows courage from grief. I stared at the window seat, where she once sketched ring ideas on napkins, and wondered whether the girl I loved ever existed outside the version her parents endorsed. Maybe she did, once. Maybe she loved me for real, at least in the soft focus of early days. But when pressure came, the script changed, and I became a PR problem to be solved. If that sounds cold, try being the guy who watched his wedding get canceled like a meeting. The American myth says love conquers all. The American fine print says love needs favorable conditions. I learned to stop praying for weather. The conspiracy part? Fine. I'll say it. Sometimes I felt like I'd stumbled into a polite cult where blessings were bestowed in the form of invitations and punishments arrived as, regretfully, we can't move forward. The robes are golf shirts, the hymns are TED Talks, and the altar is a donor wall. And yet, even cults have rituals that can be hacked. I sent handwritten thank you notes that sounded like press releases, CC'd the right assistants, never used an exclamation mark, and always arrived early enough to be mistaken for staff. People tell staff the truth. From a caterer balancing deviled eggs, I learned which councilwoman's brother hated the East Side Project. From a harried AV tech, I learned whose mic was going live at the gala. From a florist, I learned who'd insisted on white orchids to evoke restraint. Nothing incriminating, all useful. By spring, I'd become the kind of name that appears in agendas under brief remarks. At a breakfast benefiting the hospital's new mental health wing, I gave exactly 6 minutes on small business dignity, thanked the committee by name, mentioned 3 families no one usually mentions, and sat down to a small round of real applause, the kind that feels like acceptance even if it's just relief. Across the room, her mother's smile hesitated, half host, half audience, and I knew the message had landed. I wasn't gone. I had simply moved to a higher floor. Did I miss her? Every day, like phantom limb. Did I text? No. I let the silence do the sculpting. She posted pictures of charity runs and lake weekends and an aggressively beige living room. The captions sounded like someone auditioning to be happy. Maybe I'm cruel. Maybe I was reading tea leaves because I needed a story where she also bled. But on a Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed with a 6-word text I'll never forget. Can we talk? Just to understand. I didn't answer. Not because I'm a monster, but because I was mid-call with a donor who wanted to fund the small business accelerator through the hospital's council that, surprise, would seat me next to a man whose redevelopment vote had just turned wobbly. Timing is God. The next move would need lights. Not mine, theirs. Nothing flips a world faster than watching your own crowd clap for the person you wrote off. So I circled a date on the calendar. The foundation's summer gala at the vineyard with the helipad. Dress code black tie, theme, a future we build together. I secured 2 things, a keynote slot for the accelerator's launch and a guest list tweak that would bring 3 families her parents habitually performed goodness for. I didn't need a mic drop. I needed a mirror. Let them see me not as a scorned ex, but as infrastructure. Let them feel the floor shift beneath their perfect shoes. That's not bitterness. That's architecture. Revenge, but make it load-bearing. The night of the Vineyard Gala didn't start like a revenge scene. It started like every other black tie circus. Valet lines that looked like a car commercial. Small talk so forced you could hear the social anxiety creak. And a champagne tray circulating like it was part of a choreographed ritual. But this time, I wasn't here as the +1 who'd be quietly introduced, smiled at, and forgotten. I was on the program, right after the mayor's brief remarks, and before the announcement of a 7-figure pledge from one of the city's legacy families. My badge didn't say guest, it said speaker. It said I belonged. And in this crowd, belonging is currency. I spotted them within minutes. Her father in a tux that fit like it was tailored for his ego. Her mother wearing a dress so understated it screamed expensive. And my ex-fiancée, standing between them like the hinge on a door they couldn't decide to open or slam shut. She saw me first. I gave her the kind of nod you'd give a neighbor across the street. Polite, detached. No trace of the man who once memorized the shape of her laugh. If she expected a crack in my composure, she'd be waiting all night. Revenge doesn't shout, it smiles. The host's voice eventually boomed through the tent, calling me to the stage. The spotlight hit, and for a split second, I thought about every conversation where her parents reduced me to a resume that didn't impress them. Then I stepped up, adjusted the mic, and began, not with numbers or charts, but with a story. I told them about a bakery run by a couple who used to work 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, about a landscaping crew that grew from 3 guys and a pickup truck to a fleet serving half the county, about how small businesses aren't just economic drivers, but the beating heart of neighborhoods. I wove in phrases like building together and shared responsibility and long-term vision. I didn't once mention her family, but every word was a counterpoint to their verdict that I wasn't her level. This was the level. The applause was warm, not the polite, let's wrap this up kind, but the genuine, lean-forward kind. I could see her parents clapping. Her mother even nodded, the way you nod when you're not sure if you're acknowledging someone or surrendering. The donor I'd courted for months announced on the spot that his foundation would match any contribution to the accelerator up to $500,000. The room shifted in that instant. I could feel it in the air. Influence is rarely loud, but you know it when it changes direction. And tonight, the current was mine. Then came the part I hadn't planned. The mayor, off script, inviting me to join the hospital's donor council, a seat her mother had held for years. There was a beat of silence, the kind you hear before glass breaks, and then the room clapped again. I accepted with the kind of smile you give when the chessboard finally tilts the way you saw in your head months ago. Across the room, her father's jaw tightened, just slightly. Her mother's eyes flickered, calculating. My ex looked conflicted. Regret is a quiet language, but I'm fluent now. After the speeches, the gala dissolved into clusters of conversation, the hum of strings from the hired quartet, the pop of another champagne cork. People I'd never met before approached to shake my hand, offer congratulations, ask about next steps. I saw her start toward me once, stop, then turn to laugh at something her father said. That was fine. This wasn't about getting her back. This was about rewriting the story they'd told about me, about us, and letting them live in the new version whether they liked it or not. Later, under the fairy lights strung between vineyard rows, a board member clapped me on the back and said, "You've really arrived." I thought about that word, arrived, and realized it wasn't about climbing into their world. It was about building my own so solid that theirs had to lean on it. That's the thing about revenge when it's done right. It doesn't burn bridges. It makes them toll roads. And you set the price. When I left, I didn't look back at their table. I didn't need to. I knew they'd be watching me go the way you watch a headline you can't control. My car pulled away down the gravel drive, the tent lights shrinking in the mirror, and I felt, not victorious exactly, but untethered. I wasn't the guy who'd been told to get off their level anymore. I was the guy who'd made his own, and tonight, they'd stood on it. Betrayal had started this story. Toxic love had flavored every chapter. But revenge had written the ending. And in the great American tradition, the ending wasn't about winning someone back. It was about never needing their approval again.